She's finally here, folks. Yes, Banana has finally made her arrival into Mushoku Tensei. Episode 9 of Season 2. Absolutely fantastic episode. They did a really good job with this whole segment. I honestly have to say that. I mean, the reveal of Nanahoshi, him basically stumbling to get away, which I think they pulled off really well. I mean, I had my fears because the novel, the way they describe him stumbling away was just so well done. But yes, the arrival of Nanahoshi, the big reveal, the Rudeus is not alone concept, all that stuff was just, when I read this, ate up every bit of it. Ate up every bit of it. I mean, this whole segment of the novels just expanded my mind to the possibility that the story can go into, and it was really awesome. So without further ado, let's jump into my analysis. As per usual, this is from the perspective of someone that has read the novels up to volume 13, which is right after the second season is pretty much going to be adapting. I will not get into spoilers. I'm pretty much just going to say what my thoughts on the episode is itself and give you perspective of things that have been skipped that they will probably not get back to. But yes, without further ado, let's jump into episode 9 of Mushoku Tensei Season 2. Opening up the episode, we skip quite a bit. Before we get into all the stuff that the episode itself covers, what we really get an advantage point is Rudeus after everything that happened with Bodyguardi. Yes, everybody in the school is terrified of him. All the students cower in fear of his presence. Even so much that when he went over to pretty much explain his whole situation with Goliad, remember Goliad was the one that first confronted him when he caught those Ponsu that were falling in the air. He wanted to clear things up with Goliad. You know, it was a misunderstanding. And Goliad is terrified of him, cowering at him, and quickly apologizes to him to the point where everybody's starting to gather around them, and everybody believes that he's bullying Goliad. And this hurts him. I mean, he's seen all this, and it's kind of, this gathering's happening, and he's starting to panic. But then Linnea and Priscilla show up, and they pretty much take over the conversation. From Linnea and Priscilla's perspective, is they think that their boss is trying to be the big dog. And so they're trying to kind of encourage that whole situation. They sort of want him to be like the leader of the school. So they're going up to Goliad and saying, yeah, hey, boss, you know, forgive Goliad for us. I mean, it's a beast folk, you know, one of our kind, you know, just let this part slide. And then they told Goliad, you know, look, don't let it happen again or he'll chop you up into mincemeat. And then they send off Goliad. And there's this kind of fear because, yes, Linnea and Priscilla is sort of diffusing the situation. Rudeus doesn't, he's in a panic state. Like, he doesn't like the situation. He's feeling anxiety building up. So he is kind of happy that they sort of fix the situation, but at the same time, they're sort of painting him as the bully. They are painting him as being the big dog. And so while the crowd leaves, Goliad leaves, the situation has been diffused, they start to kind of try to push him in a direction of becoming the big dog of the school. And he kind of likes that idea because, as they kind of put it, that might help boost his confidence. He doesn't have enough confidence in himself, and this whole situation might actually help him. And he even starts to kind of get swept up into it. As he's walking around the school, he kind of mentions this idea of like the Caesar party. He feels like this big shot doctor that's making his rounds, and everybody's kind of moving to the side of the hallway, and he kind of likes it. But then it very quickly dawns on him, wait, no, that's not right. The fun of it quickly fades away because he's realizing, oh, this is probably sort of what kind of goes to the mind of somebody that does this in their previous life, the bullies of his previous life. And it quickly makes him correct his path. It's so funny because when I was reading this segment of the novel, I was starting to get angry because it felt like Rudeus was becoming exactly what he hated so much. And this was pretty much kind of connected with that whole situation with Linnea and Priscilla when he tied them up. Like, you're doing exactly what was done to you, and now you're doing exactly what was done to you. The people that you hate so much, you're becoming them. But like I said, it quickly corrects itself. Like, he realizes, no, this isn't right. He realized that whatever he accomplished so far, his previous life, he was at the bottom of the totem pole. That wasn't going to change even if he cured his condition. If he forgot about that, he'd probably repeat the same mistakes he made before. He had a more positive outlook on life now, but he was the same person deep down. He couldn't let himself forget that. He wasn't going to end up a shut-in this time around. He can never shed what he once was. He once was the loser. He once was the lowest. But yeah, that's when we cut to the anime itself. Now, I won't get too much into Fitz and Ariel and that whole situation. Yes, Fitz is starting to notice that Rudeus is hanging around with Priscilla and Linnea, and she's starting to get a little jealous, and that's kind of transitioning over to the conversations they're having in the student council room, where you have Ariel's going, hey, why don't you just talk to him? And she's like, no, I'm too afraid of him forgetting me. And again, this is kind of what I've been saying before. I'm trying not to cover too much of what was skipped in the novel to the anime adaptation around Fitz, because I don't know where they're going to put this stuff. I'm glad that I haven't covered as much as I have so far, because even the scene like this was something that I assumed before might be skipped. They're playing a lot of the stuff around Fitz differently in the adaptation, so I don't want to give too much away before the anime might decide to cover it. What's sort of happening right here is, yes, jump way back to the end of the first season. You had this whole situation where, yes, Ariel was bringing in the best of the best. She had this big list of a whole bunch of people, even the sword god himself. She was inviting a bunch of people from the outside, using the vice principal to help her out, bringing people of extraordinary abilities into the school so that she can essentially recruit them to her cause of reclaiming her kingdom. And one of them was Rudeus. Now, Rudeus has this whole time been under the focus of Ariel. She wants to recruit him. But it seems like so far up until this point, he keeps avoiding them. And so at this point, really, she's going, okay, Fitz, you know Rudeus. Luke and Ariel knows that Sylphie knows Rudeus. And they're wanting to recruit him. But right here, Ariel's saying, I'm leaving the whole manor with Rudeus to you. She knows that Sylphie loves Rudeus. And she wants Sylphie to pretty much handle it how she wishes. Use Fitz's name all you want. Which, yes, Fitz is technically something created by Ariel. It's this presence, this guard. And so the idea of even using Fitz could put Ariel in danger. If Sylphie uses Fitz however she wishes, and then she reveals the identity of who Fitz is, that could harm Ariel. But still, because she knows Sylphie loves Rudeus, she's saying, go ahead. Use Fitz all you want. Use that persona that you are Fitz, rather than reveal who you really are, if that's what you want. Really, in actuality, what she wants her to do is reveal to Rudeus that you're Sylphie. Be together. But no, okay, you're not comfortable with that. Sylphie is too afraid of Rudeus going, Sylphie, who? No, I don't remember nobody like that in Buena Village. That's what she's afraid of right here, and she started to hint at that. She's afraid of Rudeus saying, I don't know who you are. Instead, she's enjoying just being Fitz. So that's the conflict that Sylphie has right here. She doesn't know that she wants to reveal who she really is because she's afraid of that rejection. So again, Ariel's just like, okay, use Fitz's name all you want. Handle the situation with Rudeus in your own way. She's not going to pursue Rudeus. She's going to let Sylphie handle it. But it is kind of cool here to finally have that moment where, yes, Luke and Ariel realize that Fitz has never said, hey, Rudeus, I'm Sylphie. So remember way back when Luke first confronted Rudeus, he's like, oh yeah, I heard about you through Fitz. You're a really forgetful person. Right there, it's Luke saying, you didn't recognize Sylphie. He assumed Sylphie told her who she was. So this kind of makes more sense to them, like, oh, that's why he's being so oblivious. You're not even saying who you are. But yeah, that's when we cut to the library. Rudeus is still studying the displacement incident, looking into summoning and stuff, talk about how the fact that, yes, teleporting seems very similar to summoning. That's what I got into with the skip content last episode. This is kind of an extension of that. He's still looking into that stuff. And yes, really kind of putting emphasis on the idea that you can't summon a person. But yeah, this is where Fitz pretty much mentioned to Rudeus, hey, I found somebody. Now, it's a little bit different in the anime. Anime kind of, Rudeus is pushing on her like, hey, do you know anybody that knows summoning? She's like, yeah, I think I know somebody. Actually, Fitz came to him saying, I found somebody that can help us. It's somebody that I found through the principal and the vice principal. And she asked, hey, do you know who it is? And Rudeus kind of figures it's probably somebody that's involved with the Magician's Guild. Apparently, the principal was S rank at the Magician's Guild, and the vice principal was B rank. Which, yes, he knows the idea that B rank is still really, really good. Like, you can start your own school. The guild itself will actually give you funding and logistical support. So it's still like a really good rank to be at. But no, the person that Fitz found out about is Silent Sevenstar. Now, this is a really cool thing because they kind of hint a little bit this in the anime itself is, yes, Rudeus in his mind is going, look, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I fully understand there's a lot of things here that I'm noticing in the school that this Silent Sevenstar has introduced that is things that I'm familiar with in my previous life. Rudeus is acknowledging here that, yeah, I kind of got the hints that this Silent Sevenstar is probably somebody from my world. Because the school outfits, the blackboards they introduced, the curry soup that they introduced to the menu, all this stuff is obvious hints. And this is something that, honestly, for anime fans, is going to be jumping out of nowhere. But for those that read the novel, way back when Rudeus first left the Mills continent, and he arrived into the central continent again during his journey back home, when he gets to the Dragon King realm, he starts to notice a lot of things named Nanahoshi. Specifically, there is this Nanahoshi yaki that everybody's making. And as he's traveling through the Dragon King realm, he's noticing that there's like a lot of rice fields and stuff like that. There's some sort of indication that somebody's introducing a lot of Japanese stuff here. Now, the rice fields could be there from not Nanahoshi, but my assumption at that point was, oh, this person that's been walking around with Orsted, maybe they introduced this stuff because Nanahoshi yaki's there. They have rice fields. I don't know. But yes, this is pretty much Rudeus finally acknowledging that. And it's funny because it gets into his head and the idea that why didn't I ever kind of vocalize my thoughts? My thoughts of, I know this person's probably from my world. It's because he feared meeting them. He was avoiding meeting Silent Sevenstar despite the fact that everything points to this person's from my world. Because he didn't want to confront this person and then that person go, oh, so you're just like me? But why haven't you done anything? He was afraid of this person judging him for not doing anything with his previous knowledge. Here's this Silent Sevenstar who has introduced all these niceties of our world and used it to their benefit. And here I am just messing around. He was afraid of being judged for what he has brought to this world or what he has done, what systems he's cheated. This person's obviously cheating the world a lot better than I am. That was his fear. And so he avoided ever meeting Silent. But yes, he knows that they arranged supplies and ingredients from Asura. They added items to the menu like curry soup. The uniforms for the university was pretty much this big thing they presented, which allowed the entire university to kind of seem like a group, a single group with a common purpose. It really did improve the image of the university itself, and that's kind of what has bumped up Silent's reputation. All these improvements let them be recognized by the Magicians Guild and granted them high rank status. But yes, that's when Rudeus goes, all right, I have to go. I mean, it's finally time. Might as well go meet this person. They go up there, knock on the door, come on in, opens that door, and then she turns around, and then he realized that, yes, it's the person that was with Orsted. Completely flips out and panics and runs. And I love, again, like I said, I think they both the anime and the novel really kind of pull off this whole scene. He's panicking. His breathing is erratic. He's stumbling over himself. The entire time he's seeing these images of Orsted piercing him, crushing his lungs, and he's stumbling over himself to get away. The novel kind of presents this idea that the entire time he's like, why is Orsted here? Why is Orsted here? Orsted's chasing me. Why is Orsted keeping behind me? He keeps connecting Orsted as Nanahoshi. That's the cool thing. He's realizing, why am I calling her Orsted? He knows the masked person isn't Orsted, but yet he's connecting Orsted to her. And so that's the whole thing he can think about is Orsted. Orsted's after me. Orsted's chasing me. And he keeps talking about the fact that his legs aren't doing what they want him to do. He says, I keep running and she's right behind me. Why is she so fast that she's able to keep up with me? No, I'm not moving. My legs aren't working. They're not doing what I want them to do. He feels the pain of his lungs being crushed. He feels the pain of his heart being pierced. It's all going through his head as he's trying to get away from her. And the entire time she's like, that's kind of rude. It's just a great little introduction. It's really fantastic. But yeah, really good way of kind of portraying that. It's, I think, the best way they could portray that without really getting too much into his head in the anime itself. But yeah, cut forward to the infirmary, not Nanahoshi's room. For some reason in the anime they had him in the Nanahoshi room, but that makes more sense, honestly. But I really love this because I think this has been a big, massive question mark for a lot of novel readers, is how they're going to handle the language. In the novel, obviously, they're quickly to specify he's talking in Japanese, she's talking in human tongue. In the anime, we were really curious how they're going to do that because, yes, the whole anime has been in Japanese. How do you portray they're not always doing human tongue in the anime. They're using Japanese. But in the story context, they're not talking Japanese the entire time. The entire anime series has been in human tongue for the most part. So how do you portray this? They did good. The moment that Rudeus wakes up, they immediately switch to this fake language of the human tongue. And that helps it transition to the moment that when Nanahoshi starts going, okay, I'm going to talk to him in Japanese, and she starts talking in Japanese, and Rudeus immediately knows who it is. Because that's the whole significance here. He wakes up, he's panicking, like, oh crap, she's right here, right in front of me. He's starting to freak out. Where's Orsted? And she's like, Orsted's not here. He's not going to come after you for a while. And he's like, wait, so he's going to come after me? He's like, nah, he's a busy guy, and it just depends on what you do. Like, if you keep screwing up and he sees you as an anomaly again, he's probably going to come after you. I can't guarantee Orsted's never going to try to come kill you. But that's when we get into the 3 questions. One of the 3 questions were massive shift in everything. But no, she asked him, do you recognize these names? She wrote down 2 names in Japanese. Anybody else in this world is not going to recognize what she wrote on that paper. All she has to do is say what's on this piece of paper, and additionally, she can say it in Japanese. And that pretty much answers multiple questions for her. If somebody recognizes what she's saying, she'll at least know that there's somebody that knows Japanese from their previous world. Additionally, if they are one of the 2 people on that list, it's one of her 2 friends from the previous life. Again, cut back when Rudeus first got hit by the truck, Nanahoshi was standing there with 2 of her friends. So those 2 names is Shinohara Akito and Kuroki Satoshi. She's assuming that those 2 people went with her. There's nothing to say that they didn't transport with her. So she's trying to find them. But no, Rudeus does confirm one thing, that he at least knows what she's saying. So she at least knows that he's from this other world. So now we finally have a confirmation at this point that Nanahoshi was also brought to this world just like Rudeus. Her name being Nanahoshi Shizuka. Now some additional novel context here. Rudeus doesn't want to tell her what his name is. He's being very careful about what he says to her. Why? Because he doesn't like his previous self. He doesn't want this person in front of him to know who he is. He didn't like his previous self. He doesn't want to even speak his old name. But no, it's funny the idea that Nanahoshi immediately goes, oh hey, we're from the same place, and Fitz does not like this. Fitz is like, wait, no, you can't be from where you're at. He's from where I was at, but she's not going to say that. It's so funny that she has something that she wants to jump in here with and say like, no, you're wrong, but she can't say it. Like, she can't say, no, you're not from where Rudeus is because I know where from Rudeus is. But yes, that's when Nanahoshi reveals her face, and she looks exactly the same. And which is a massive question mark to kind of present to the whole concept here that Rudeus and her are pretty much from the same place, different times, but looks differently. And different situations here. And it's funny because even in the situation, she assumes that he is just like her, that he was transported there, but he doesn't look Japanese. So she assumed that he's like half Japanese, that he's from another country or something. But no, he was reborn there, where her entire body was transported there. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because Nanahoshi assumes that Rudeus is in the same situation she is. Like, obviously you want to go back, right? Nanahoshi says specifically, I'm not interested in this tedious world. I don't plan to use my knowledge to make it flourish like some ridiculous manga or light novel. I'm acting solely on my own benefit. All I care about is getting home as quickly as possible. But on the other hand, Rudeus does not want to go back. He likes this world. He has friends. He has family members. And again, yes, he didn't like his situation back there. He was not happy. He hated his life. He wasted his whole life being a shut-in. He's got nothing to return to. His family hates him. He lost his parents. He has no finances. He has no future. Why would he want to go back? Nanahoshi's different because we're getting a perspective that Nanahoshi was just a student. She had her whole life ahead of her. And it's funny because even though that she's bad-mouthing this world that she's now in, that she doesn't want to be a part of it, it's terrible. Their sense of morality is bizarre. He's okay with her calling it names. He understood how she felt. She didn't fit into this world. And he had no plans of correcting her point of view. They're sort of opposites in this whole situation. They both were transported in some way to this new world, but he was a shut-in with no life before. She was outgoing and had a life. Now they flipped places. Now she's a shut-in inside this room, trying to figure out a way to get back, not wanting to meet anybody, hates the world, doesn't feel it's real. While he's enjoying and partaking in the world, he's outgoing. They've swapped places, basically. They're 2 people that have basically swapped their situations to a different world. So he sort of gets how she feels. But yes, this is when we get into the whole backstory of Nanahoshi up until this point. And I'm going to give it pretty much from the perspective of the novel because it's got quite a bit of more tidbits in there. Nanahoshi originally appeared in the Kinavasara. And this is pretty much at the point in which the displacement incident happened. You had this one scene where you've seen Orsted and he's looking upon the displacement incident as it's happening. Well, he went there, seeing Nanahoshi standing in the middle of this field, has nothing, and so he basically takes her in. Doesn't know why. Rudeus was wondering why, and Nanahoshi's like, I don't know why. But Orsted showed up and took her under his protection. She mentioned that when she was in the Kingdom of Vasara, she learned about the world itself, learned the local languages, basics in magic, the economy, and lifestyles. Which, yes, Rudeus found was pretty shocking. She learned human tongue within a year. But it did make sense to Rudeus because, yes, Orsted has a curse. She had to learn to speak to these people herself. She couldn't just bring Orsted and go, hey, can you ask them about the local, I don't know, economy or something like that? Everybody would flip out. He has this curse that makes people hate him. But she spent 2 years in Asura. In that time, she earned enough money with knowledge of cuisine and clothing to obtain power and then create reliable streams of passive income. She secured connections with powerful merchants to arrange distribution routes for her products. She told people the Dragon God, one of the 7 great powers, was backing her. She was basically using Orsted's name. At this point, she had enough money to live a life of luxury. So again, they kind of was sprinkling this throughout the series. I kind of mentioned this back with the skipped content when Rudeus went to the brothel. All the women there were wearing beautiful clothes. And they mentioned that at that time there was this up-and-coming merchant that was essentially having clothing disassembled in Asura and transporting it to the north and then putting it back together. It was a way to get past like a lot of taxes and stuff and pay cheaper. This is one of those things that Nanahoshi was putting together as a passive income. She's got this massive merchant ring, and she's got to the point where everybody's handling it, to the point where she's just making a bunch of money. And which, yes, she's gonna have to use that money to buy a lot of goods, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yes, this was all stepping stones for her getting back to where she belongs. She didn't want money. She didn't want wealth. She doesn't want fame in this world. That's why she created the name Silent Sevenstar. She doesn't want people knowing who she is. But yes, this is when she left with Orsted and traveled the world for an entire year. She was researching how she could return, but additionally, she was looking for her 2 acquaintances. But yes, as they traveled, of course, they ran into a lot of foes. Orsted would immediately fell them. Rudeus was one of them. But she felt that Rudeus was different. That's why she advised Orsted to revive him. She knew that there was something different about him. It's mainly the fact that Orsted mentioned that he didn't see Rudeus in his visions. Rudeus was like this anomaly, something that he even questioned about her. So if he didn't see her, he wouldn't see Rudeus too, which makes that one commonality between the 2 of them. Which makes me wonder why she didn't ask Rudeus about the piece of paper back then. But yes, she continued to travel around the world, using Orsted's name to meet a lot of different people. Pretty much a single letter signed by the Dragon God got her meetings with pretty much everybody. Famous mages, high-ranking knights, even monarchs. Which again, yes, Orsted, the Dragon God, is the 2nd in the 7 great powers. He's literally the 2nd most powerful person, which again, even Mangod mentions the idea that he technically is number 1. It's just that he has this thing that's preventing him from using his full power. If he wanted to, he could destroy the world. And yes, a lot of this is kind of shocking to Rudeus because, wow, a year? And he traveled the whole world? It took me 3 years. Which that brings up the fact that, yes, she was using forbidden magic, or at least Orsted was using forbidden magic. There was these ruins with teleportation circles that are hidden away that they were using to get around. But she knows that she doesn't know where they're at. Yes, it makes sense that they're traveling around and suddenly they go in the circle and they appear somewhere else and it's snowy or something like that. She doesn't know where they're at. She doesn't know the world. Eventually in her travels, she met somebody that knew a lot about summoning. Nanahoshi tells Rudeus someone may very well have summoned you to this world. She couldn't say who this person was that she met, but he was pretty much like the world-class authority on summoning magic. In response to why she couldn't say who it was, she said, "It's for my own safety. Should people learn that you met me, you'll find yourself plagued by swarms of greedy, power-hungry jackals. You'd be wise not to mention my name to anyone if you prefer to avoid that." But still, this authority on summoning still didn't know how a living person could be summoned from another world, because we're going to constantly mention this idea that summoning, you can't summon living people. But yes, now that Nanahoshi had this information about summoning, she decided to start her research. That's when she goes to the university, starts studying summoning magic. It mentioned that she donated an enormous amount of money and earned B ranks with the Magician's Guild. She used her connection with Asura in order to get uniforms and apply various improvements. She arranged for a long overdue reform of the curriculum and teaching tools. That earned her A rank with the guild. They even offered her S rank if she shared her research, but she turned it down. Yeah, she's not going to share this information. She's basically researching a lot of things that are probably taboo in this world. She doesn't want them to have that. Again, she's not wanting to benefit the world. She doesn't want to change things in the world. She's just doing this for her own benefit. She just wants to get out of there. And again, repeating herself, she's not remotely interested in reforming the world for the better or climbing her way to the top. She never made anything that she wouldn't use herself, nor did she provide those things to other people. Rudeus felt this was cold-hearted. Like, yeah, she can create air conditioning or something. But sensing this disappointment in him, she sighed. In her mindset, she believed that if you change too much in this world that you're not supposed to be in, the world, the universe, the laws within it would erase you. Which, yes, technically, if you think about it, that's what Orsted did to Rudeus. You're not supposed to be here, and just kills him. But no, in the end, she hated this world and she wanted to return. But Rudeus liked this world, which made her kind of assume that, oh, then you must have died peacefully. Like you had no regrets in your whole life, which is kind of that, for us as viewers and readers, is kind of a chuckle thing. Like, no, we know Rudeus hated his previous life. That's why he doesn't want to return. She thinks that he just had a great life and died peacefully. But now after this, we get into Nanahoshi's research itself. Summoning magic relied on learning about magic circles. While more dynamic magic like elemental and healing mostly used incantations, you needed circles for static magics like barriers and summonings. Yeah, for those that remember back when Rudeus got stuck in Chiron, he was inside of a barrier magic and it had this circle on the ground. Most of Nanahoshi's information had come from books and records. She mentioned the fact that the people of this world are very set in their ways. She realized that it made sense given the harshness of their environment, but she was looking for something totally unprecedented, so she couldn't expect anyone else to teach her. She had to research and study this stuff herself, which made Rudeus kind of question. He had learned everything about magic from other people of this world. He wasn't looking to achieve anything revolutionary like Nanahoshi was, which, yes, gave him a lot of respect for her. Now, this is where we add like a really interesting little twist. Nanahoshi mentioned the fact that she has no mana, and everything that she's doing right now requires mana. That's why she has, this room is just full of these magic crystals, these mana crystals. She has to keep buying, all this money she's making is literally going into those crystals. She has to buy massive supplies of crystals. But no, Rudeus mentions, I have mana. And that's what makes her realize, oh yeah, everything in this world has mana in it. So if you were reincarnated into an infant and born in this world, it makes sense that you have mana. But she, because she transported with her body, she doesn't have mana. It's like this assumption that people of our world, we don't have mana. So if our bodies get transported somewhere else, it's not like we suddenly get mana capacity. Rudeus was born there, so he's able to build that. Which, yes, is kind of one of those sad things. She's been living her whole life in this other world without being able to do all the cool things that Rudeus got to. Remember one of the first things that Rudeus did that made him start to enjoy this new life is learn magic. He was so excited to learn magic. He started learning it and everything like that. Nanahoshi was dropped in the middle of nowhere with no capability of using magic. And it sucks because she wants to return home, which would require her to use magic. And so she's kind of in a pickle. But that's when we get into, again, a lot of the aspects around Nanahoshi and what makes her kind of unique in this world. She says, it's been 5 years since I arrived this world, but I haven't aged at all. And yes, Rudy's kind of mentioned the idea that that's kind of a good thing, right? You get to stay young forever, right? She acknowledges, yes, I suppose it's preferable rather than growing old in a foreign land. Which, yes, this kind of makes sense. In our world, when we grow old, we hopefully have people that will look after us. We have our children, we have maybe an old folks home, we have some place that will often take care of an elderly person. Whereas this world, she's alone. So if she grows old in this world, she's going to be probably dying in a ditch. Which Rudeus does remember. That's right. When I'm with the man god, my body's the same. It didn't age there. He figures that's how it works for those that visit from other worlds. Following this, the novel gets really more into detail about what Nanahoshi's doing. She explained all that she learned about the magic circles. She would first pulverize magic crystals, mix them in powder with ingredients to make paint. These ingredients varied based on the nature of the spell. Large-scale spells at king tier or above required unusual catalysts that typically needed the financial backings of a country to get what you needed. This paint was used to draw patterns. It would absorb into the surface, and then mana poured into it would produce a specific effect. The magic paint then would typically disappear after a single use by general rule, which meant, yes, she's having to crush up all these crystals, turn them into a paint, draw the design, pour mana into it, and it would disappear. And then you had to crush more of it, paint it, and stuff like that. It's a very tedious process she's doing here. That's when Rudy's obviously questioned, okay, you're using these teleportation circles to travel around, were those disappearing? And she's like, no, they were actually carved into the ground, which is very different than actually painting a magic circle. Painting essentially in these days was normal. Most people used paint. But in the past, there was a variety of different techniques that were lost in time. You could carve your circle into stone and then pump magic into it directly. Nanahoshi wasn't using this method, so she never pretty much studied into it, but it was widely used for creating magical implements. Because yes, for magical implements, they're like these objects that do different effects when you pour mana into it, and you couldn't just paint a circle onto it because you want to reuse it. Magic circles could be used for pretty much any sort of spell, if you had the right method. The problem is that most were passed down orally and were lost in time, and no one out there was capable of devising new ones. If you wanted to discover a new magical circle, you had to find old scrolls, or stumble across engravings in ruins, kind of like the whole teleportation circle. This was how things were, until Nanahoshi arrived to shake things up. She'd analyze patterns, drew up her own attempts, perform experiments, and ended up creating her own brand new patterns. Rudeus seen her as impressive. The more she talked, the more Rudeus wanted to learn from her. However, she had no plans of handing down anything that she knew. Instead, she wanted to make a deal. She had no mana, she had no way to defend herself, and she wasn't growing older, but she assumed that she's not immortal. She wanted his help of getting out of this world. She found the food atrocious, their sense of morality was bizarre, and everything was so incredibly inconvenient. They didn't even have shampoo here. And more importantly, everyone that she cared about was in the previous world. She wanted to go back very badly. On the other hand, Rudeus does not want to go back. But still, she had plenty to kind of provide to him. I have all these people that I know. I can find pretty much anything that you want. You're doing research on the displacements, and I can probably get you some answers. So you help me with your mana pool, and I will get you connections. And that's when we have Fitz join the party. It is so funny because Fitz the entire time just standing around doing nothing and just kind of grimacing every now and then, looking not too happy about Nanahoshi grabbing Rudeus' hands. But yes, this is when Rudeus finally goes, hey, can we talk in human tongue? I want poor Fitz here to get involved with the conversation. And that's when it kind of transitioned to the next part of the discussion, which involves her putting on, in the anime, she put on 2 rings. In the novel, it mentions 3 rings, but doesn't really matter at this point. She puts on 2 rings and then brings up the fact that she doesn't know the specifics of the disaster itself, but she knows that it coincided when she arrived in this world. She's being perfectly honest with Rudeus. I don't know much about the displacement incident, but I can tell you, I arrived at the same time. So she assumes the displacement incident was a side effect of whatever brought her here. This is the massive big reveal that yes, Nanahoshi arrived for the reason of the displacement incident or as a product of it. Whether it was her being summoned there and it caused a displacement incident, or maybe the displacement incident happened and she just got sucked into this process somehow, she doesn't know. Which wasn't a surprise to Rudeus. He knew that summoning and teleportations were similar in many ways. So he can see this idea that, yeah, maybe her being summoned there caused a teleportation. Summon happens, teleportation happens. They coincide somehow. They're very similar in many ways. Which, yes, Rudeus is understanding because he's had this whole context of discussion with Nanahoshi. The entire time they were talking in Japanese, they'd come to this understanding. Fitz, however, the entire time knew nothing about what they were talking about. So when finally Nanahoshi starts talking in human tongue that she can understand, she immediately says, hey, by the way, I caused a displacement incident. Which makes sense why completely sets Fitz off. And she just wants to kill Nanahoshi. But yes, casting magic, one of the rings shines, stops the magic. Fitz goes to attack instead physically. One of the other rings shines, creates a barrier. So kind of proves that she has all these little rings that have these interesting effects. And yes, she knew that this discussion was probably going to be questionable. That's why she put the rings on. She knew that Rudeus might possibly attack her. I don't know if she knew that specifically Fitz would. But after calming Fitz down, yeah, that's when Rudeus asks about Orsted. If Orsted knew anything about this whole situation. But yes, she says no. Orsted said that nothing like this ever happened before. Again, that's why Orsted came there. He's like, what's this light? What's going on over here? Rudeus thought to himself that, yeah, the man god did say that Orsted caused it. But Rudeus in his mind right here acknowledges that, yeah, Orsted has this curse. He wondered if the man god was possibly under its effects. He figured that maybe with the feud going on between them, maybe the man god was just blaming Orsted. I like this idea that Rudeus never really takes what the man god says for 100% granted. Like, he just doesn't go, okay, if the man god said it, it must be true. He's maybe thinking that, well, they have a feud, and there's a possibility that he's under the effects of what, makes everybody hate Orsted. So maybe the man god's not telling me the truth here. Even still, he does acknowledge that maybe it could be that Orsted and Nanahoshi are just skilled liars too. Like, he doesn't trust really anybody 100%. But yeah, that's when Rudeus says, look, let me think on this for a little bit, and they kind of go their separate ways. Rudeus has a little conversation with Fitz, who I like here because Fitz is kind of questioning Rudeus, what do you think of this girl? Again, there's an aspect there that you obviously feel that Fitz is probably a little bit jealous of how close Nanahoshi was getting with Rudeus. He admits that there's something about her that he didn't like very much, but he thinks that she's relatively trustworthy, which is seemingly enough for Fitz to understand. Like, okay, well, if you trust her, I'll trust her. But what Rudeus is kind of saying here is that he doesn't like the aspect that she doesn't like this world, despite the fact that he likes the world a lot. But additionally, there's an aspect that he doesn't like the fact that she's done so much, but it seems like it's trivial to her. While he's not going to brag about his own works, he just doesn't like that attitude. Doesn't like that she doesn't seem to accept what she's done. But yeah, that's the episode. That was a lot to go through. Sorry for usual for the long videos, but most people like me getting through all this details about what was kind of skipped in the anime, so I'm providing something to people, and that's what they're liking, so I'll keep doing it. But I did like the fact that Refugin, one of his tweets during the episode's airing, he said, "Oh, that mask is Orsted's henchman. That means Orsted must be around here somewhere, behind a dumpster or something." I just have this mental image of Orsted peeking his head out from behind a dumpster. I did have one last thing I want to go into, but I don't want to get too much detail into it because it seems like one of those things where it sort of hints at something possibly changing in the future in regards to the anime adaptation. It's kind of similar to what I had mentioned before. Way back when Rudeus saved Lilia and Aisha, at that moment, Lilia gave him the necklace that Sylphie made. And right then in the anime, Lilia said that Sylphie made it. Whereas in the novel, Rudeus thought that Lilia made it, and he didn't know about Sylphie making it until way later. This might be something else where they're changing that could be insignificant, but it could also be very significant. All I'll say, I'm not going to spoil it. All I'll say is, for those that read the novel, read the chalkboard. In Nanahoshi's room, there's a chalkboard, and something's written on it that sort of implies they might shift, or at least not include a whole segment of the story. And I'm very curious how they'll turn out. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. I greatly appreciate you guys' support. The feedback and the viewerships for this series of videos has been absolutely fantastic, and I greatly appreciate your guys' support. I'm glad that you guys have been enjoying my skipped content and analysis of the episodes themselves. But with all that said, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, and you like this content, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.